Hey, what's up, guys? Glad that you guys could join us as we jump into this brand new series we've been working on called Overcome. We are so excited about this. This series is not about us being overcome by the hard and difficult things we face in life, but rather it's about us having honest conversations about how we can overcome, how we can tackle, how we can find victory through and over those hard and difficult and weird things that we face on the day to day. So, without further ado, we're going to dive right into this. As you guys know, we're right in the midst of this COVID-19 pandemic that has really spread across our planet, that's spread across our country, that's spread across our province, and that's really hitting us even close to home because we even have cases of it here in Mount Forest. And this whole thing has really forced us to change the way that we think about things. It's forced us to change the way we do certain things. We're doing this thing now called self-isolation, which is probably a weird idea, a weird thought that I don't think I would have ever thought of in a million years, but here we are. And we're doing quarantines. We're doing this thing where we're supposed to keep our distance from each other. And for some of you guys, maybe this is normal. Maybe this is stuff you love. You're like, hey, I don't have to be around people. But for some of us, it's a little hard and it's a little difficult. And I know for me, I'm one of those people. The thing that I think is really striking me in the midst of all this is that the things that we are normally pretty comfortable with, the things that we sort of do on the day to day that are part of our routine, a lot of those things have been thrown out the window now. And there's a lot more limitations now on our life than maybe there has ever been before, at least in our lifespan. And that's weird, and that's hard to think about. It's difficult because when all that stuff sort of gets thrown out the window, I find that what floods in to replace it is hysteria. It's panic. It's anxiety and doubt. But I think really at the core of those things is fear. See, I think that right now there is a fear amongst many of us because there's a fear of the unknown. See, we don't really know what's going to happen tomorrow, do we? And we don't really know what's going to happen a week from now or a couple of weeks from now or 3 months from now or a year from now. And I think that idea sort of freaks us out a little bit because we live in a society and we live in our lives, we live in such a way that we feel so comfortable being able to say like, well, this is what's going to happen. This is what I'm going to be doing generally. And then when something comes along and it sort of knocks all of that stuff off balance, or it knocks all of that stuff really out of the park and out and throws it out the window, suddenly we're feeling pretty afraid. Suddenly we're feeling scared and we're feeling terror and we're feeling that panic and that hysteria. We're feeling that fear. Well, I know that can be pretty intimidating. That can be pretty hard to deal with, and it can be pretty hard to take on. But we're not the only people that have ever felt this way. And you go, yeah, Terrell, there's like 7.5 billion other people on this planet feeling that way. And you would be right. But we're not the only people throughout history to feel this way. In fact, in Jesus' time, back in the early part of the last 2,000 years, Jesus had these guys that followed it. They were like his closest buds. They were his tightest group of friends. And they were on this boat and they're in the middle of the Sea of Galilee, and this storm hits. And it's incredible. Like, this storm is just like otherworldly. And the waves are just sort of hitting the boat and rocking it all over the place. And the wind is crazy. And they are thinking to themselves, we are going to die. We're done. We may as well punch the ticket right now because we are at the end of our lives. They, in that moment, were terrified. They were afraid because they didn't know what was going to happen next. And you see, that fear of the unknown, it creeps in, doesn't it? And in the midst of that fear, and in the midst of this incredible storm, they look out and they see something on the water, something they've never seen before. They see this dude walking towards them. Now, you see that, I see that, we're not thinking, hey, there's some guy coming towards us. There's some dude walking on water. We're probably thinking what they're thinking. We're thinking there's a ghost coming towards us. There's something otherworldly coming towards us. We're screwed. We're euchred. We may as well, we're done. We are just absolute. This is it. This is the surest sign that our fates are sealed. But out of that storm, and in the midst of their fear, they hear the words of Jesus. And they hear him cry, they hear him call out to them. And he says, don't be afraid. Take courage. I am here. And as Jesus entered the boat, that storm just calmed. The waves and the water just calmed. Because what does Jesus bring? Jesus doesn't bring things that will feed into the fear and panic. He brings peace. And that's why Jesus called to us, guys, during this time is not for us to run further away from him. It's for us to press closer to him. It's for us to draw closer and closer and closer to him. The question is really, how do we do that? How do we draw closer to Jesus Christ? Well, I got just a few things I want to throw out to you guys. These are just a few ideas. Maybe you come up with some of your own ideas. But I think these 4 ideas are pretty solid about how do we draw closer, how do we press closer to Jesus in the midst of all the fear and the panic and hysteria that we are facing in our lives right now, today. And the first thing, guys, is just to acknowledge your fears. Be honest about it. Own them, okay? Don't try to be that strong and brave and courageous person and act like, well, I'm not scared of anything. We all have fears. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be scared. But it's not okay for us to allow our fear to control and rule over our lives. So how do we move past the fact of just owning and acknowledging our fears? Well, I think one of the big ways, guys, is to make sure that you surround yourselves with positive people who are going to build into your life, people who are going to encourage you and lift you up, people who can be there for you to listen to you when you need someone to talk to you about what is causing you to feel so afraid. So make sure you surround yourself with the right people. But I think the last 2 things are the 2 biggest things that will help us in this idea of overcoming, or at least tackling and working through our fear as we move through life. And the first thing, guys, that I want to say is, like, if we're called, for the whole idea is that we're supposed to press forward towards Jesus, like we're supposed to press towards him, we're supposed to draw closer to him, then the biggest thing we can do is just to communicate with him, right? It's just for us to talk to him and to be honest with him about the things that we're facing and about the things that we're really struggling with and we're really wrestling with. The truth is, guys, is that you might not feel like you have the right words to say to God. I know a lot of times I don't feel like I know exactly what it is I'm trying to say to God, and sometimes I just feel like I'm a little all over the place. But the amazing thing is that God still wants to hear from you. He will understand what it is that you are trying to communicate. Believe me, he will. In fact, in the book of Romans, it says that the Holy Spirit that he gives to us, that lives inside of us, that he speaks words that we can't even speak, that we can't even understand, that he intercedes. That means he speaks on our behalf. Okay, so believe me when I say God knows what you're trying to say. So just talk. He's ready to listen. And the second thing, guys, is that truth silences fear. Truth silences fear. So what does that mean? You know what that means, guys? It means take time to get into the greatest book, the greatest love letter that has ever been written. And it's a love letter that's been written to you and me. And it's the story of the Bible, okay? So take time to get into that book, because believe me, the truths that you will find in that book, the stories that you will read of people who were afraid as well and who overcame, and the verses that speak directly to fear or speak about love or speak about whatever topic, whatever thing we're facing, all of those truths help to silence the fear and the panic and the hysteria in our hearts, and instead to replace them with peace. In fact, in 2 Timothy chapter 1, we read, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, of love, and of self-discipline." And so as we read the scriptures, we get to read encouraging things like that, that help to silence the fears of our hearts and the fears of our souls. Or we can read things like this, where in Hebrews 13, this beautiful reminder where God says, I will never fail you. I will never abandon you. Or Jesus at the end of Matthew 28, he's coming to the end of his time on earth, where he's been hanging and chilling with his disciples, and he looks at them and he says, be sure of this, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Even to the end of the world, Jesus goes, I'm going to be with you. And so guys, in whatever you are feeling today, whatever fears you may be wrestling with or struggling with, whatever other hardships, know this. Know that God is with you, that he loves you, that he cares about you, that he is willing to walk through this journey with you, and that his truth, that his presence, that his love, his life can wipe away any fear. It can silence any fear, and it can replace them with the peace and the love and the hope that we so desperately need in our lives. Anyway, so wanted to share that with you guys. We love you guys. Looking forward to the time when we'll back being able to connect with y'all. Until then, praying for you, love you, and just have a safe, amazing rest of the night and a safe, amazing rest of the week. Talk to you guys later.